Now, one of our panel members is running a little late, so she will join us hopefully in the next couple of minutes. But in the meantime, we'd like to welcome you to attending the Major to Career panel hosted by the Center for Career and Experiential Education. As many of you know, my name is Patrick McElveen, and I am the Neuroscience Coordinator. My pronouns are he, him, his. This panel will be recorded today, so just so you're aware. And I thought we could kick things off by just asking each panelist to introduce themselves, give their pronouns, and then tell us what your current position or title is or what you're up to now, post URI or post URI undergrad in the neuroscience program. So why don't we start off with Liviana?
Okay. Hi, that's my name, Liviana Donatelli. I graduated in December of 2023 from the clinical neuroscience program, and I also did a double major in psychology. Right now, I mainly work as a research assistant in the Bellini lab, so I'm on campus. And if you walk by CBLS, you'll probably see me right now. And I also work as a direct support professional with the Frank-Oline Center in Westerly. Yeah, and I can talk more about other things. My pronouns are she, her, hers.
Thank you, Livy. Okay, Alex, why don't we have you introduce yourself next?
Hey everyone, my name is Alex. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am a first-year graduate student in the interdisciplinary neuroscience program, doing my master's thesis, and I also serve as a teacher assistant for Dr. Albert, as well as a research assistant with my major professors, Dr. Vanessa Harwood and Dr. Elisa Barone. And then I've completed my Bachelor of Science in Clinical Neuroscience during last spring of 2023.
Awesome. And Seth?
My name is Seth Kadar. My pronouns are he, him, his. I graduated from the INP in May of 2023. I'm currently a post-baccalaureate student at Tufts University.
Very nice. Okay. So the other person joining us will be Paige Lazarus. She's not here just yet. So just give you an idea. Oh, sorry, Paige.
Oh my God. That's okay. I just got in.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Paige Lazarus. I graduated in May of 2023 with a major in molecular neuroscience. I'm currently working as a medical scribe at an orthopedics office and an OBGYN office, hoping to apply to PA school this cycle when it opens on April 25th.
Very nice. Awesome. Okay. So just to give everyone a heads up of the format of today, we're going to let the panelists speak a little bit to start off with, just about what they're up to, how they got to where they were from their undergraduate career. Then we're going to go into some specific questions about, potentially what they could have done differently, suggestions or tips they have for undergraduate students today, what they're looking to do in the future. And then we'll leave the last 10 minutes or so, because I believe class ends at 1:50. So I'll try to wrap everything up by 1:40. So the last 10 minutes or so, students can ask questions for the individual panelists. So panelists, if you wouldn't mind, and why don't we start? We had Liviana go first. So Paige, I'm going to have you go first this time. Why don't you talk about, what position you're starting in, how you entered the role, and just kind of remind the group as well what your major was in neuroscience.
Okay. So once again, I majored in molecular neuroscience, and I currently work as a medical scribe. So once I graduated from college, I kind of looked on Handshake and Indeed on different positions that could give me clinical experience, like looking to apply to PA school. So, and I feel like a good thing was having a bachelor's and having like experience in neuroscience. So I feel like my background, especially when shadowing PAs as well, like you have a background in medical knowledge and such. And I just feel like as a whole, we took a wide variety of courses from cell biology to developmental neurobiology. And I feel like it set me up to be able to ask the proper questions when observing in the medical field.
Awesome. Thank you. Seth, we'll have you go next.
Yeah, so my degree I graduated with was clinical neuroscience, which is very different from what I actually do now. So in the post-baccalaureate program that I'm in a pretty much a neuropharmacology lab. And these programs, I really have enjoyed this program and I really recommend it. They're free to apply to. Traditionally, they're a year in length, and they're fully funded by the NIH. So you're not paying for education, you're getting paid for education. And I plan to apply to PhD programs in the upcoming future. Does that answer everything, Patrick?
Yeah, more or less. So question for you. So this post-baccalaureate program, like, does this just kind of prepare you for graduate school? Like help you like define what you want to be doing? So like kind of just help maybe an undergrad who didn't even know that was an option.
Yeah, sure. So it's a year of fully funded full-time research. My program, it differs across universities, but my program specifically has a basic skills for scientists course, which we're taught writing skills, oral presentation skills, statistics. And we're also given the opportunity to take a graduate level course here. I'm currently in fundamentals of neuroscience. And the material is definitely a lot more dense in a graduate course compared to an undergraduate course.
Nice.
Trying
And
to
are you
think
working
of
with a like a PI or a faculty advisor?
Yeah. So we originally were, what was really nice about this program is because we already have our own funding from the NIH, we could join almost any lab that we were interested in. And my lab's composed of 3 professors. One of them's a PI, and there 2 are associate research professors. And I work directly under one of the associate research professors.
Okay, awesome. And then my last question for you is, do you know, like, did the NIH support these in a lot of different schools, or was there select universities colleges you were looking at?
So a lot of schools. In Boston, there's at least 5. Harvard actually has a neuroscience specific post-baccalaureate program.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some of them are 2 years, but recently the NIH has decided to just make the program 1 year. But a lot of the major institutions will have post-baccalaureate programs.
Very cool. Okay, so maybe that's some options for some of the undergrads who are in attendance today. Maybe you have some coursework you want to finish up, or maybe you're pre-health and maybe you don't have all the courses done. So maybe post-baccalaureate could be a good option. Alex, why don't we have you go next?
I just want to intervene real quick.
Yeah.
So this post-baccalaureate program is not for people who are pre-med students.
Okay.
They
Good to know.
actually do not endorse you going directly to medical school afterwards unless it's an MD, PhD program.
Good to know. Okay, scratch that, but thank you. Okay, Alex.
Hey, so just a reminder, I graduated with also with the clinical neuroscience background, May 2023. But before that, around a year, the summer of like 2022 or a little before that, I actually joined the research lab I'm in, the Collaborative Cognitive Neuroscience Lab. A lot of the students are kind of familiar because also from the class that I TA for. But I joined this lab because it was actually kind of a requirement for the curriculum for NEU 410, which everyone is familiar with. But I'm very grateful for that experience because it required me to join either research-based lab and gain experience that way. So I joined that lab because I was interested in specifically in speech and language processing. And I was also interested because I use EEG and eye tracking methodologies for the research, also for cognition across different neurodevelopmental disorders and also neurodegenerative disorders. But throughout this experience, I found my way there and was able to contribute to a lot of different research studies and gain a lot of experience working with human subject research and participants. And I knew that I wanted to work more with human subject because also throughout the experience like NEU 262 or lab work, I found that I enjoy more of the human interaction and I feel like I can excel in that. So I kind of found that my way there and still continuing to work through that up till today. So almost 2 years now. But through this experience was still heavily involved, kind of having like leadership positions over the years, working with a lot of different participants for different studies. Also grateful to get my name in one of the papers, published papers. So very rewarding process. And again, grateful for that experience, having to join a lab because you learn a lot through it, through research. And without it, maybe I would have joined research and learned about it maybe at a later date or maybe not at all.
Nice. Yep. And so for those of you who don't know, Alex worked in Dr. Harwood and Barone's lab down in Independence Square. So especially for clinical neuroscience students, if you're not interested as much in bench work, kind of like Alex is involved in, but it sounded like PhD were kind of like more involved in the bench work. Dr. Harwood or Barone would be good people to go pursue some opportunities for your Neuro 410. Awesome. And Livy.
Okay. Hi. I in thinking of like hearing everybody else's stories, I'm reflecting on my own. I have not had the most linear path in choosing like what I want to do and the experiences that I chose to do while in undergrad. So from when I got to college, I was really interested in applying to medical school. I thought that that was what I wanted to do, the perfect career for me, whatever. So I did a bunch of different things that they tell you to do when you want to apply to medical school, which is like get research experience, get shadowing experience, work in clinical like health areas. So I did a bunch of that. And I also became really interested in working in a lab, which led me to Dr. Fellini's lab, which is how I originally like became interested and involved in research on campus. And that is currently where I still work right now. And I love it. So I'm really happy that that worked out the way it did. Eventually, I realized that I thought I wanted to do an MD PhD for a while, and that is like an interesting path and really, really cool. And I support people who want to do that, but not for me. So I switched my mind. I changed my mind a couple of times, and I've landed on school psychology. And I can talk about why for people who are interested. But in short, I love the testing aspect of it. I don't know how much people know about school psychology. It's not like super talked about in the realm of psychology, but I think it's like a really cool blend of being a scientist practitioner where you can do testing, have a quantitative basis in psychology while also working in schools and treating people and actually intervening. I think that it is a really cool field to get into. So all of that combined, I just recently this cycle applied for a bunch of different school psychology masters and PhD programs, and I have committed to RIC, Rhode Island College's masters / CAGS program in school psychology. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm waiting to start. I start in the fall. Yeah, and in the meantime, I'm going to continue working at the lab for a while. And I also work as a direct support professional. I can talk about that too if anyone's interested. I'm going to keep doing that. All different like related things.
And you graduated in clinical, or which one did you graduate? Okay, clinical neuroscience. Awesome. And so, maybe if you don't mind, we'll have you keep on going. But my next question was going to be, how do you think your degree has assisted with where you are today and where you're kind of like looking to go? So, in what ways has the neuroscience program and degree helped you and where you're going? Was there certain aspects of the program that maybe helped you realize, okay, maybe I don't want to go into a master's or a PhD program in neuroscience. Maybe it's something completely different, like the CAGS program.
Yeah, I can definitely talk about that. I was interested in neuroscience from being in high school. I like read a book and that kind of got me onto the topic. So when the INP started its undergrad program at URI, I was really excited. I would think I was a sophomore or something. And honestly, I have loved every class. Like generally, I've loved every single class that I've taken. I think that the professors all care about your success, and that has been really nice. And I love that the program is small, which is like another reason why I chose to go to RIC and not somewhere else. As for how it's prepared me for what I'm going to do. So I think this might be different than other people because I'm going into a psychology like related field, not really medicine or hard science. So I feel like coming from a background of being like heavily involved in, I've done a lot of like wet lab research. That's what the Fellini lab does. We focus on neurodegenerative disorders and mainly ALS, FTD, frontotemporal dementia. So I've done a lot of like bench work, and I'm currently doing a lot of bench work and wet lab research. So taking those basic analytical skills and being able to apply that to psychology and treating kids is, I think, a really huge asset that not a lot of other people coming from a psychology background have, that I've noticed thus far.
Yeah. And I'm
I
sure like
think,
even neuro 230 or 320 with
yeah,
Wyatt.
for me, I might have been like at the same token, I think that put me at a little bit of a disadvantage because other people may have had more relevant experience to what they were like a PhD program in clinical psychology. They have research in psychology labs, but like that's not to say that I think
Yeah.
that the skills that I've learned from this quantitative area has helped me more than I would have if I was in a different area originally. Does that make sense?
Completely. I think, there's something really to be said about transferable skills.
Mhm.
So I'm sure even working in Dr. Fellini's lab now, you're learning different things that you can then apply to potentially your CAGS program. And also
Oh, yeah.
you're learning what you like and what you don't like. And, I think all of you, no matter where you are, either our panelists or undergraduate students will realize, you know, life is definitely a journey and you're going to discover things that you really like and things you don't. So you may do a Neuro 410 experience as an undergraduate and realize not really into that thing and maybe you want to do something else. So kind of same question. Why don't we have Seth? Why don't you go ahead about how your degree has assisted with where you are today at Tufts?
Yeah, sure. So, bachelor's degree is a requirement for the post-baccalaureate program. Um, the two neuroscience courses that I found really, really helpful were 262, and then I believe it's 410 for the experiential one, right? Just because they give you a good sense of what working in a lab is actually like. And I know the 262 course gave a very good overview of different methodologies used in neuroscience, um, as well as just kind of the critical thinking skills that you learn from all the classes you take. I mean, even calculus, for example. Um, and I don't use calculus, but I'm just using that as an example of critical thinking skills you'll develop. It's interesting because my degree was clinical neuroscience and I'm not necessarily working on the clinical neuroscience side. So I think that it's really good that it's very translational. Just because you pick one subset of a degree doesn't necessarily mean you have to do that. But just kind of a good background within neuroscience has really been very helpful in the current work that I do.
Awesome. Yeah. So again, you can go into one track of neuroscience and even graduate in that area and still, like Seth said, he's in clinical and now he's in neuropharm. So completely different in some ways, but still prepared him. Paige, why don't we have you go next?
Okay, so as a pre-PA student, obviously the basis of the neuroscience major is perfect to line up all your prereq courses that you need for PA school. But I felt like I obviously picked molecular neuroscience. I felt like it better fit what I wanted to do. But just because you are a molecular neuroscience major or a neuropharmacology major doesn't mean that you don't take the clinical aspect classes as well. I also took clinical neuroscience, and I actually found that that course was extremely helpful. You learn about different mental illnesses and whatnot. And I feel like as a whole, what I took away from the neuroscience major is that there's so much research we need to do. There's so much unknown in the field of neuroscience. And like it just proved like medicine is not black or white, it's most often gray. And I feel like it just set me up as somebody who wants to be a provider, who wants to be a physician assistant. Like you like every case is not always going to be the same. And I felt like the neuroscience major got me into research. And although I figured out that research wasn't exactly my cup of tea, it still proved that there was so much that we don't know yet about the human body. And I just feel like it was a really good basis as somebody who wants to be a provider.
Very good. Yeah. No, so definitely, again, you're going to learn potentially if you want to do more research or maybe you want to work more on the human side, but for sure helpful. And then Alex?
Yeah, so much like everyone else, my career path during undergrad was not very linear. So when I first started, I was actually a biomedical engineer major, and they didn't even have the INP for undergraduate program yet. And then COVID happened, so that of course affected a lot of my decisions and everyone's decisions. But during like the end of my freshman year into my second year, I decided I wanted to switch my major. And I was looking more like psychology kind of majors at URI, but then coincidentally found that the clinical neuroscience, well, specifically the INP for undergraduates, was available. So I think it was kind of like meant to be in that aspect. So I was very grateful for that. And I actually started off interested in like the neuropharmacology track, and then eventually found myself on the clinical neuroscience track. But regardless, all these kind of backgrounds put together found me along this path today, and provided further interest within neuroscience and why I decided to go to graduate school for it as well. And so the different courses at URI that really helped me was, of course, 262. Like Seth said, gave a really great lab background, as well as 410, of course, kind of discussed that already. And then 320 as well, because that was clinical neuroscience and the basis of kind of my degree. And so I learned a lot, learned how we could apply our each individual degree into the workforce. And then Dr. Wine was also wonderful at teaching that course as well. But again, kind of all these backgrounds helped provide and narrow down my interests within the field of neuroscience. And then one thing that I really love about the program is the interdisciplinary aspect, because you touch on so many different aspects of the field, and neuroscience is very broad and can be applied to so many different aspects, whether it's like more psychology, human subject, using rodent models, AI and BCI, etc. But yeah, I'm just very grateful that for the interdisciplinary aspect to help narrow down your research interest, because it can be hard to do so.
Mm. Yeah, and I would definitely empower all of you, especially because when you get to your track courses, so those 15 credits that you have to take for whatever track you're in, try to take a diversity of courses. Don't just take things that specifically are only interesting to you, because that's going to help you in your career and help you be more knowledgeable in all different areas. So my next question is, talk about a day in your life, kind of where you are right now. Is there anyone who wants to go first?
I could go first.
Awesome. Thank you, Paige.
Okay. So like I said, I'm currently working as a medical scribe, looking to like build up my patient care experience hours as a pre-PA student. So I typically, once I get to work, my main role is to write down and keep track of the patient provider interaction. So whether that be a PA, an NP, or a doctor. So depending on the day, it varies on the provider that I scribe for, but I basically go in the room with them and I observe the interaction, write down the important things. If blood work needs to be ordered, I'll order blood work. If messages need to be sent to other providers, I'll send them. But writing notes is specifically important because I work for an orthopedic surgeon. And so a lot of the time, if there's controversy in the notes, if lawyers need to look at the surgical notes, I feel like that gave me a different aspect on medicine a little bit. Like you don't realize like how important every person of the medical team is. So, and I feel like it's a really great experience because I see firsthand interaction. So it's almost like shadowing, but it's not. So it's really great to see a physician assistant firsthand and doing what they do every day.
And are you going to be looking to work in orthopedics, or is that just kind of a position that came open and then?
Originally, it was a position that came open,
Mhm.
but after speaking to the PAs and what I really, really like orthopedics, and obviously once I get into PA school, like that might differ looking at different fields,
Mhm.
but I just feel like scribing has been it gave me exposure to so much medical terminology. And I've just come to realize, oh, when somebody says certain symptoms, that means they need a shoulder replacement. Like, I just feel like it's a really great stepping stone to getting into a PA program, or if you want to go to med school, scribing is
Mm,
also a great experience there too.
awesome. Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I could go.
Okay.
So as a graduate student, a day in the life can be very long and busy, because you have, just like undergraduate, you have less classes, but you still have coursework that you have to take care of. And of course, it's at a graduate level, so maybe more complex or less time restraints, things like that. But on top of worrying about your actual courses, also serve as a teacher assistant, so having to attend classes for that, helping to insert any emails that students may or may not have, and helping in any way, of course, with the professor you're working with, grading papers, etc. And then, of course, working as a research assistant, kind of like the main focus towards my thesis towards the end of next spring. And that, of course, takes a majority of your time because you have to conduct the research, work collaboratively with your team or teams to schedule participants in my case. And it can make for pretty long days, for example. And like specifically work with human subject research. And like, for example, one of my studies is working with like children with and without ADHD, and also like adolescents and young adults pretty soon. And then, as you can imagine, like people have day-to-day lives, like school and work, of course. So their availability, you have to often cater to them if you want them to be able to participate in research. So, for children specifically, they get out of school later in the day. So after you have classes in the morning, you help with TA or answer emails. You also have a lot of meetings to go through for different labs or with your major professors. And then after all that, you still have to worry about research either in between or after kind of your day of handling your courses. And then of course, like once you have enough data and all of that, then you go through different processes of research, which people probably familiar with, like data analysis, eventually manuscript writing, things like that.
Yeah. So definitely a lot between the TA position, your lab work, and then your school work, for sure. And I think, Alex, you would agree that probably the grad work, it's a lot more kind of like bigger projects. I don't want to say undergraduate work is more busy work, but they're smaller projects in scope. And so definitely it's, a lot more time management on your own compared to undergraduate. So something just to kind of prepare for, which is nice because you're in a classroom less, there's less, smaller projects, but yeah, definitely a lot. Seth, why don't we have you go next?
Yeah, so my schedule is very malleable and contingent upon what I need to do that specific week, but I can kind of give you like an average layout. So usually I'm in lab by 9. I'm currently doing a lot of immunohistochemistry work, so it's a lot of staining brain slices, imaging them, and then analyzing them. Um, Currently, I have a class Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just in the morning. And then I'll frequently have meetings with different um, different professors, different faculty. Um, Not sure how much detail to go into, but pretty much it's from 9 in the morning until whenever I leave. I'm doing a lot of data collection work and data analysis.
So on average, how many hours do you think that is like on a given day? Like, is it like a full-time job, almost like 9 to 5 in some ways?
Yeah,
Yeah.
essentially. And sometimes it's longer than that.
Hmm.
Sometimes it can be shorter than that.
Okay. So lesson,
Yeah.
make sure you enjoy what you're doing.
Hmm.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Awesome. And then Livy.
Okay, so my schedule is, I think, a little bit crazy at this current moment in time because I graduated and now I'm kind of waiting to start my grad program. So I'm not taking classes right now. So I currently am working 15 hours a week at the Fellini Lab as a research assistant. I had the option, like when I talked to Claudia about the position, I had the option to work more than that, but I had just graduated and kind of wanted to take it easy. So I chose to work 15 hours a week. And for me, that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I do like 5 hours a day there. But honestly, and like this is, I think, with any lab, especially if you're doing more wet lab stuff, and depending on what PI or whoever you're working under, I come in when I want and leave when I want at the lab. So my hours are very flexible. It's up to me though to make sure I have enough time within 15 hours a week, because I cannot work more than that. Make sure I have enough time to get all of the experiments for the week that I need done. Make sure that like I do a lot of cell culture, a lot of imaging, like live cell imaging, and a lot of image analysis and data collection, things like that. So I have to make sure that like the microscope is open Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Like these are all of the little things that go into planning and executing experiments. And sometimes it's more difficult within a shorter time frame like that. I have to be really like specific about when I choose to do things. So that's the lab. Usually I'm here, like I said, Monday through Wednesday, like 9 to 4 or earlier. For the direct support professional job that I have, that is basically the Franco Lane Center is a community like service center, I want to say. They pair, my job is they pair me or like other direct support professionals with families in Rhode Island who have children who have disabilities. So it's a wide range of people you'll work with. It's like a wide area. Like I do not go into the center. I go into people's houses and work with their disabled child. So that has been like a very interesting job. I started doing that when I was still an undergrad, and I've kind of kept the same amount of hours throughout. So right now I am working with one family and I go there Tuesdays and Wednesdays afternoons. And I'm there maybe 3 hours, 3.5 hours each day. So it's very nice. It's very chill. But like what I do there, it looks different, like vastly different depending on who you work with. I worked originally with a family whose child had cerebral palsy. So we did like therapeutic exercises and watched a lot of movies because she wasn't super mobile. So we watched a lot of movies. We chatted, things like that. Then the family that I currently work for, their child has ADHD and she's younger. So it's like a completely different set of things that we do. We go to the park, like go to the library. We like do lots of crafts, things like that. And then the rest of the week, I still actually work at Chipotle. So that is another thing that I do. I'm like waiting until my contract at the lab ends in July. So I'm waiting till that to kind of source another job for during grad school.
Nice. So my last question for you all before we open it up to students, and I'll give you a second to think. What would be your top 3 lessons you would teach or give to yourself in undergraduate, whether that be around potentially grades, educational experiences, faculty, anything like neuroscience related? What do you think you could have taught yourself to help yourself? And I'll just give my example. Like when I was an undergraduate, I was very much type A. So if I got a B+ in anything, it was the end of the world. And then I realized 5 years later, no one cares. And you're, as long as you have a pretty good GPA, you're going to do okay. So top 3 lessons. Anyone want to go first?
I have one that like I felt like when I was an undergraduate student, like that I needed to have it all figured out. Because I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a doctor or a PA, and I was like so stressed out all the time about like if I'm doing the right course. And if you take a minute to realize a lot of the pre-med and pre-PA prereqs like Bio 101, 102, Chem, Orgo, all those, they're most often the same. So you don't feel like you have to rush exactly what you want to do, because at the end of the day, the foundation is typically the same. And then another thing is like, for me personally as a PA student, I felt like I wanted to go right into PA school right after college. But it's okay to take a year off to get that personal patient care experience. It's okay to take a few, if you feel like you're not prepared enough academically, take a few more grad courses while you're working and getting patient care experience. It's extremely competitive, and you learn to understand that as you look more into it. But you don't have to feel like it's a rush to get there. Taking a year off is okay to get hours, take courses, whatever you need to do.
Yes, those are both very good and important things. And why don't we go Alex next, and then we'll go Seth, and then we'll go Livy.
So I have two things in mind. Maybe I'll think of a third thing along the way.
Yeah,
But
two's
the
fine.
first thing,
Mhm.
is I think the biggest thing that could be applied not only during undergrad, but honestly your whole life, is not to compare yourself to other people. And honestly, just like kind of the saying goes, like compare yourself to who you were yesterday. But I think that's super important because it's very natural to want to compare yourself to other people, especially within a competitive field like neuroscience. And I kind of thought a lot about this because like getting into research a little late, honestly, not until like right before my senior year. And I didn't have any other kind of prerequisites that stood me out from other people. And I didn't really know of a plan after, even within during undergraduate, until like the last year or so. But regardless of that, like you'll still be able to figure it out. And it's very important not to compare yourself to other people because then it can affect your day-to-day life and everything. But you always be able to figure it out. Just kind of take it day to day, and regardless, you'll come out fine. And it's all about the work that kind of the work rate you put in. So like I kind of moved at more of an exponential rate during like my last 2 years. I mean, I feel like I've been able to catch up to my peers at the rate that I'm comfortable with. But regardless of whatever accolades you have or experience, there's always going to be time for you to catch up and gain the experience that you're looking for. And then another thing that I think is important to know before graduating college is the idea of like assistantships and graduate assistantships and teaching assistantships, fellowships. I didn't know about that till like my senior year, and that kind of phenomenon was very bizarre to me at first, that colleges and universities actually pay you to work for them.
Mhm.
And like I'm a first generation student, so I didn't have like any parental support or other family support to like ask questions regarding this stuff. So oftentimes you kind of have to figure this stuff either on your own, whether that's doing your own research online or asking professors about this. So that's something that I wish I kind of knew about earlier, because you can often like miss deadlines for certain applications and things like that. So it's definitely better to get ahead, um, even if you don't know exactly what your plan is.
Nice. Very good. Seth?
Yeah, so I want to highlight what was mentioned by both Paige and Alex, is that it's okay if you don't know what you want to do right after college. There are plenty of people, actually, I want to say even the majority of people who matriculate into graduate schools that aren't right out of college. With that being said, if you do know you want to pursue a PhD afterwards, my best advice would be to get into a lab as soon as possible, just so that you have more experience. Um, because that's definitely one of the things that programs look for. And I would also emphasize to take advantage kind of the resources that the INP provides. Like I presented in the neuroscience symposium last year. I believe you guys just had one, another one, right?
Last spring, yep.
Any like opportunity to do something like that, to be able to add something to your resume or just be able to get the experience, definitely take advantage of.
Yeah, no, I love all of those. And I definitely think that is extremely true. And every one of our participants today, they're all getting professional experience right now. Like this, they're on the pathway, or they're, like Alex's case is he's in a MS program, but they're all getting professional experience first, and then they're kind of going into it. And then Liviana?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that you guys have mentioned. I think it's like I've changed my mind probably a billion times. So that's totally normal. And like you hear people will say this to you, but once you experience it, you feel different, right? Like it's hard to hear these things that people have said to you all over, like all of the time, is what I mean. Until you actually experience it for yourself, then you're like, okay, I get what they mean now. I have changed my mind and it's fine. My like biggest advice, I think in general, for anybody like in the neuro program or in any program right now, is that you don't have to prove yourself to anybody. I think for me, I felt like I always had to do the most difficult thing or like the most challenging. Like I wanted to do an MD PhD in a field that nobody does that in. There's a reason that nobody does that in. Like the thing that I wanted to do was incredibly difficult and nobody does it. And that's not accidental, but I felt like I had to because of reasons I don't know. So you don't have to do that. You can along that line, you have to do what makes you happy because this is your life. You know what I mean? Like nobody is going to look at your life and say, oh, you didn't go to Brown or Harvard, you didn't get an MD, you didn't get a PhD. I don't want to work with you. You're lesser than. That does not happen in real life at all, ever, actually. You can do whatever you want pretty much at any point in your life. Yeah, so don't feel pressured to like as coming from someone who like has wanted to do a PhD for a really long time now. I have just matriculated into a master's program for a lot of different reasons than like just my own decisions. Like if I had gotten into more PhD programs, maybe that would have been different, but I'm really happy about the way things ended up. And I at first felt a little bit like this is not a PhD program, this is a step down. But no, it's just different. It's these programs exist for a reason, not just as stepping stones to higher degrees. Does that make sense?
No, completely. And I think you're speaking a lot to what a lot of people feel sometimes in the sciences, and that, you need a certain degree to be, at a certain level or worthy enough. But like you're saying, it is about your passions and where you're interested in, helping people and do the work. So, in your case, yeah, the MS is totally great for that. And some of you may discover that as well.
Get a lot of
So,
different experience. Sorry,
no,
that's the way to find out what is the best for you. Like
for
get
sure.
lots of different varied experience.
Yeah. So at this point, we're going to open it up to questions. People can either raise their hand, or if they want to put a question in the chat, they can. We'll try to catch all the hands if people have specific questions, but just as a reminder, Alex and Livy and Seth all did clinical, and Paige did molecular track. Paige is pre-PA, Libby's working in a lab, Alex is in our master's program, Seth's in a post-bachelorette or baccalaureate program. Bachelorette, wow. Any kind of questions for them? These people have all gone through it, where you'll potentially be. If I'm not seeing your hand, just feel free to unmute yourself. And I guess my question in the meantime, while we're waiting for some hands, is what do you all find the most rewarding in your position? And we'll just kind of go with Paige again, starting with that.
I feel like the most rewarding thing is getting to see like how providers impact patients' lives firsthand. Like I've seen so many cases where like the patient at the end of the visit is just like, thank you so much for sitting down and talking to me. Like I've never had a provider that sat down and took the time to have a conversation with me longer than 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I just feel like it's a really good example to shape me and to like get experience on how people with the field of medicine. Like a lot of people are so scared to sit down and say, oh, like I'm feeling this way or whatnot because they're intimidated by the doctor. it's just really touching to see like how the PAs that I work for have like made a difference in people's lives, like taking the time to look at the case as a whole. I've seen cases where the orthopedics referred them back to their primary care doctor about their blood pressure, and turns out their kidneys are failing, and it saved their lives. Like, it's just really impacting to see like if you address a situation in a holistic manner, like how much of a difference that really makes on a person physically and mentally.
Hmm. Definitely the power of good practice and medical practice. Seth, how about you?
So what I would say is the most rewarding part of the job I currently do would be kind of after an experiment and you analyze your results and you're kind of the first person to know this new piece of information, this first person to find out what happens after your experiment. And I think that that's a rather neat and cool feeling that you don't get to experience too much outside of research.
Yeah, you're the first. That's awesome. That's a good one. Alex?
Yeah, I'd say the most rewarding is being able to help people in different ways, whether that's like serving as a TA and helping students answer any questions or clarification, or helping with any assignments like that. But then also with research, working with human participants. It's very rewarding when the participants are also very interested in your research and they like to ask questions, and they enjoy coming to the lab and participating. It really makes the role a lot easier and a lot less stressful when the participant is also interested, and most of the time they are. So I would say that being able to work with humans, and of course, it's not always great. Sometimes there are difficult people you can deal with.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's very rewarding to see people interested in your work and people who are also grateful for you to help them.
Awesome. Last but not least, Livy.
At the at the lab, the most rewarding thing I think is just when experiments work. Like, I feel like a lot of the time I just do the same things over and over again. At least before. Now I've kind of gotten in a good rhythm where things are doing okay. Now that I said that, we'll see what happens. But when things work, that is like such a rewarding experience. I love doing data analysis, so that's always fun. I also find working with kids to be like so incredibly rewarding, being able to work with this new family. And I'm like interested in the topic of ADHD, so I get to kind of change the script of how ADHD is understood in this young person who like clearly has biases told to her, and I'm able to like advocate and teach for her, and she just gets it, and that's it. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
incredibly rewarding to see a younger person think about ADHD differently. That's like a niche thing, but I think in general, working with kids is incredibly rewarding.
No, definitely. I'm glad to hear that. Well, if there aren't any questions, anyone? Okay, must have answered all your questions. Well, thank you to all the participants for taking the time and sharing your insights. We really enjoyed this today. We wish you all the best and luck in the future. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. Thank you. See you later. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You as well.
You too. Thank you.